Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
You're listening to the Skift podcast. Today, we'll hear from Skift's head of programming, Brian Quinn, as we preview the topics and themes with our editorial and research team for our Skift Future of Lodging event happening in London on March 29th. Be sure to visit live.skift.com to register and learn more. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of the Skift Travel Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to look at some of the future trends happening across hospitality and some of the big questions facing the sector as a preview for our Skift Future of Lodging Forum happening in London on March 29th. We're so thrilled to come back to London. It was great to be there last year. The energy was incredible in the room. And this year, we're focusing a bit more directly on hospitality and what's happening there. So for today, I'll be joined by my Skift colleagues, Senior Hospitality Editor Sean O'Neill and Skift Head of Research Wouter Geerts. Welcome. I'm going to jump right in and let's start big picture because it's not just what's happening across hospitality, but all of travel right now. We started the year with cautious optimism for 2023, and indeed, maybe we're avoiding a full-blown global recession, but the summer for Europe for sure looks to be robust, outpacing 2022 for the predictions that we're seeing and the projections. Outbound China travel is restarting. So there's a lot of things in the air. And as we're in the midst of earnings season for hotels, what is top of mind right now? Sean, I'm going to start with you.
Well, Brian, I feel it's understandable that after the pandemic, the travel industry is really focused right now on making money. We want money. We want more of it, and we want it more quickly. Yeah. And there's no shame in that, as my Irish mother, God rest her soul, would say. And so this conference is going to have a lot of tactical and practical insight about who is making money and how in hotels, resorts, and professionally run alternative accommodations across Europe. And I'd like to mention just one macro money theme that we're going to explore in this conference, and that's a tension between independent hotels and branded hotels, independent versus branded. In the decade before the pandemic, 2010 to 2019, Europe's independent hotel sector contracted by around 12%. And if you flash forward to today, the rising utility bills for energy and the rising worker wages, it may push more independent hoteliers to sell their properties. So in short, you may have a once in a generation turnover of lodging stock, but it's not all gloomy. What's painful for some represents an opportunity for others. And so, Brian, I think we have some big name investors that we're going to be having here. Is that right? Or
yeah, definitely. This will be a hot topic throughout the event. We'll have Highgate joining Starwood as well. So I think from the investor view, and we know that weighs heavily throughout hospitality, we'll certainly want to know what's top of mind there. And indeed, it is a robust time for revenue. But not only that, certainly there will be some conversations around experienced consumers, et cetera. But I guess, Wouter, I'll let you jump in first. What are you seeing and what are you kind of excited to hear as we think about the hotel industry come end of March and in view of this year?
Well, I'd love to first tag on to what Sean said on the independent versus the branded sort of properties and how that's evolving. I think he's right in that things have been evolving over forever, really. It's always been evolving, obviously, and so it is a very interesting question. I think also if we just look ahead, and Brian, you mentioned there might be a recession. What's the impact of that going to be? We are cautiously optimistic, but will a recession have an impact on that particular brand versus independent question as well? I think that's very interesting. In the past, we've seen recessions tend to do well for brands. Independent hotels just don't have the capital and the reach to be able to attract the fewer amounts of consumers that are out there looking for hotel rooms. So let's see what's going to happen this year. I think independents are in a pretty much stronger position, I would argue. They have had quite a few years now to get much better at the sort of direct booking game and the marketing game, and there are some more soft brand approaches by hotel brands, which I think sort of show you as well that they are looking at how can we get this independent feel moved into the branded space. And so it's really interesting to have a look at that, I think, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from our speakers at the conference as well. I think another area which I personally are also very interested in is what we've last year coined as the great merging. And so how does sort of the whole change in how people live and work and socialize and travel, and what does that mean for the travel industry? I think we talked about it a lot last year, but I think there's still a lot of unsaid things that we can cover, and things have moved on again as well since we were in New York last year. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the big subtext, is that, at Skift, we always kind of follow the consumer. It's not always what the industry delineates or defines. Most consumers don't really care. It's about the traveler expectation, demands, all of that undercurrent, which really is propelling a lot of things forward. So certainly, in recent years, Airbnb has always been top of mind for people as a brand, for consumers, and for the industry in terms of what it means in terms of change. So I guess, Sean, what do you think about that? What's the kind of current thinking of Airbnb, its impact, and the way in which hotels are reacting?
As you mentioned, Skift conferences, they stand out by using the consumer lens as the way to view things. And we're looking at not fads and trends, but sort of like the long-term changes in behavior. And so, I think Airbnb represents certain changes in consumer demand and expectation. And when customers have this experience in professionally run short-term rentals and vacation rentals, that colors their expectation when they come over to hotels. If it is very easy to check into your hotel room, if you're getting a very much a local experiential experience, if you can, easily broadcast your music or your streaming services onto the local TV, that is something that you're going to want to have in your hotel, for example. And some other things, there are ways that hoteliers can compete. Another consumer lens that we're going to cover is wellness and what well-being, which is how consumers look at things now, is different than it was 5 years ago. We could talk for half an hour about that, but I'm just going to say that's something we'll cover at the conference. And I think I would also say that there's some sort of like demographic shifts as well, and that are sort of can be taken advantage of by something we'll call hybrid hospitality. It's sort of this crossover between hotels and what has been called, the short-term rental space in the past.
Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
I would tag on to what Sean said, if I may, in terms of I guess hotels and technology. I think it's an area that I'm quite specialized in Skift research, and I think what's interesting is to look at the evolution of technology in hotels, where hotels used to be ahead of what we had at home, and obviously now it's pretty much the reversal for many hotels. And short-term rentals have been better and quicker to adopt new technologies, I would argue, which makes complete sense because they don't have the large portfolios and don't need the massive investment and don't have the big buildings. But I think that's a really key aspect where we can And I feel that the pandemic has sort of opened the eyes of some hoteliers, at least of more hoteliers, that tech can enable certain probably removal of dead end jobs, mundane jobs with labor issues as well, of getting people back in. I think that's really important. And just to, as a final point, Sean said we don't follow the fads, we follow sort of long-term trends. One of those, I guess, which does interest me, and I know other people at Skift as well, including our CEO, is sort of the generative AI, Chat GPT, and what the impact of that will be. Bing released its Chat GPT search function, and Google is going into the game as well. So I think that's really interesting. Will that have an impact on hotels?
Right. I was discussing this yesterday with a speaker, and indeed, like, are we entering, are we at the cusp of a new era of personalization where we're not just, understanding data from a perspective of who the customer is, but also their desires, and the ways in which generative AI can complement that. And of course, there's also all sorts of customer service things that it could help with. So
Yeah.
I guess on personalization, is that really top of mind for a lot of hoteliers going forward, and thinking about how can they stay relevant, compete, differentiate, and just stay ahead of this technology as things move faster and faster?
I think so. I mean, personalization for the big brands, it can mean about loyalty. But for independent hotels, the personalization, they have their own way of being able to provide a much more individualized experience. And as Wouter was saying, with technology, there's ways to run your property more cost efficiently, but there's also ways to be able to boost your international demand with more direct bookings with technology, and by understanding the customer better, and that the technology can enable you to do the personalization. And so we'll be hearing from both perspectives. We'll be hearing from Jean-Jacques Morin at Accor, and then we're going to be hearing from independent hoteliers like Tamara Lohan from Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who knows a lot of the independent hoteliers. At least, I don't know, Wouter, what your take on personalization is.
Yeah, I would say to anyone listening, go read Sean your sort of megatrend on emotion-based hospitality. I think I feel that's where personalization is going, and I really love that piece. And I think hotels are looking at how they can personalize a stay and an experience, and it's becoming, that's going beyond sort of what pillow do you like, or like loyalty programs, and
Right.
are not just about points anymore. It goes into every crevice of what it means to what hospitality means. And I think that's a really exciting trend, which I suppose is a continuation of what we've been seeing over many years of how hospitality is evolving. But I think that's a really good piece, and a very good cornerstone of hopefully the conference as well.
And there's going to be an element of personalization in this conference itself, because we've been to this venue before. The Londoner has lots of little one-on-one corners to meet in and do your networking in. So I'm excited to go back there. I lived in London for several years, and it'll be great to meet my colleagues there. We've got about a dozen staffers now across Europe and Middle East and India that'll all be there. So that's going to be fun for me personally.
Yeah, it's going to be a great gathering, and agree. The Londoner is an amazing space. We're very excited to come back. So yes, all of those issues, I think this is a great preview, and kind of we'll see as things evolve what really is on the top of everyone's minds come March 29th in London. We'll address this in addition to emerging technologies, sustainability, of course, some of the global demographic shifts. I'm sure labor will come up quite a bit, and of course, luxury and lifestyle, and it's all of the impact that it's having across the industry. So join us, Future of Lodging Forum on March 29th in London. For those of you listening and you've hung on, you can actually use a code podcast to check out at live.skift.com, and you'll receive $100 off your ticket if you have not yet secured. So go to live.skift.com, use the code podcast. Thanks so much, Wouter, Sean, for joining us. And this will be exciting. We'll look forward to seeing you on stage.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Cheers. Thanks.
This has been the Skift Podcast. Thank you for listening.